I think designers are really good at developing that empathy for the user, right? That's kind of their hallmark. That's what they're known for, right? And so they really understand the user well. They walk in their shoes. They develop a perspective to design a product specifically for them. And I think they have to just do that with their own context of business, right? Like walk in the shoes of their boss, walk in the shoes of an executive, and understand what is important to them so that you can fulfill some of those needs that they have for that. And I think they're looking for creative solutions.
Hi everyone, welcome to designdrives, where we interview the most forward-thinking designers and innovative creators on the planet to inspire and help you to reach your full creative potential. In this episode, I actually got the chance to chat with Paul Lafata, VP of Product at Gier, and also former CEO of a venture innovation studio from Mercedes-Benz, as well as holding many design leadership roles in companies such as BCG, Qualcomm, or Bird. With Paul, I talk about the difference between designing a digital automotive experience and designing a digital consumer app, and how the two processes are very different from each other, and what are some of the challenges when it comes to innovation. We also talk about what is actually good design leadership and how can we evolve as a designer by building bridges to business stakeholders. I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, so today I'm here with Paul Lafata. Thank you so much for taking the time, Paul.
Thanks, Sebastian.
So I'm really looking forward to chat with you about your background in design, but then I think what's interesting also, you got the chance to serve a business role, being the CEO of Mercedes Innovation Lab in the US, a venture studio, which I think is going to be interesting to talk about how you brought design into the discussion on business and how that whole conversation is going. Besides experience in corporate and startups, you also recently got the chance to make experiences at Gier, which is a health startup. We're going to talk about that as well. So you actually got experience in multiple industries. But Paul, I think what would be best for the audience, if you would just, in your own words, give a bit of a context about your experiences. How did it all started out for you? You made a lot of learnings along the way, different parts of your journey. If you could highlight this maybe for the audience shortly.
Yeah, well, thanks. And, although my career has had quite a bit of pivots in terms of industries, I think the center of it all is still design. And I still use that in everything that I'm doing, whether I'm a product manager or a designer of new media or automotive or whatever that is. So that's been the common thread, and been fortunate to work with some good companies, good industries, and work on great products all throughout that journey. And those are, really different kind of areas, I think, from telecom to mobility services with automotive to music and video, and now with healthcare. So lots of different industries and companies like Mercedes and Bird and Qualcomm and BCG. So very fortunate to work for some great companies, and I've learned all along the way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So I think you, in the beginning, you were, of course, like it always does, a product designer on the team. Then at some point, you started to move into business. Was this sort of a conscious decision for you to kind of grow in that direction, or was it more that that there was an opportunity that came up, and so how was that transition for you, moving from a product designer to also a business leader?
Yeah, I think that journey starts with becoming a higher and higher level designer, and you can't go straight from design to business leader in one step, but I think you gain more experience over, managing design teams, bigger and bigger design teams, and then you start interfacing more within the company to other parts of the company that become more business facing, more with product management, more with business development, more with executives. And then eventually you start to get those opportunities and they start to see you're thinking that it's not just about, thinking about exclusively the product, which is still good, but it's thinking beyond just the product. And I think that's when they start to take notice that, hey, designers can be business leaders as well, right? And I think in the case with BCG and Mercedes, they kind of really expect a business thinking as part of the core acumen that you might have, right? They want more than just a designer. So I think when designers are ready and they have that acumen, then they can kind of tune themselves for those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you recommend for designers that are close maybe or thinking about that to make that transition? Are there any kind of common things that you kind of seeing that maybe designers are missing? Is there is this maybe education? Is this maybe expectations from them? What such a role would entail? Any kind of advice to designers when it comes to maybe senior designers or design directors who are thinking about making the next step? What should they be aware of? What kind of common mistakes do you see? What would be your advice to them?
I think yeah, being aware of the opportunities and kind of looking out for those, right, and developing some relationships with those people that will, find the value in what you're bringing, design wise, and how you can take that design expertise and really use that for business. One example would be, I think designers are really good at developing that empathy for the user, right? That's kind of their hallmark. That's what they're known for, right? And so they really understand the user well. They walk in their shoes. They develop a perspective to design a product specifically for them. And I think they have to just do that with their own context of business, right? Like walk in the shoes of their boss, walk in the shoes of an executive, and understand what is important to them so that you can fulfill some of those needs that they have for that. And I think they're looking for creative solutions, right? I think they now more than ever, business leaders are looking for creative solutions and different ways of solving problems, and they look to designers as some of those people that can do that and think in a different way. So I think we can solve their problems first. We've already solved some of the user problems. Now solve our own business's problems, and I think they then give you that opportunity to try things out, right? And like, hey, why not have a designer as a business leader, because they've got an interesting perspective on things and taking it from another way. And I think they realize more and more that customer experience kind of trumps everything else, and that if why not have someone that's an expert in customer experience and design and products to help lead other facets.
Yeah, this is a topic that came up in past episodes before, and I think Gavin Bethune, I think, put it also nicely in one of the past episodes. He said it's a language that you learn, and it's a way of communication. And I think as designers, we are taught to have empathy with the customer, the user. We are trying to fight for the best customer experience, but learning that empathy on the business side as well. And I think product managers constantly have to do that. It's always a trade-off, specifically, if you join a startup, you're going to experience that. And if you have to take bigger decisions there, design is one part, but then there's also, you have to think about technology, you have to think about, the business side, and you constantly have to balance all of these different things. Design being one of them. So I think that's sort of an interesting way to kind of look at it. Learning a language, learning a way to communicate, and actually taking the skills we have in empathy, but kind of applying that also to all the stakeholders we have in the company.
Yeah, you're right. It is a communication thing first and foremost, which is one of those things, like, you don't learn that in design school. You don't learn that in other kind of things. You have to learn that just by doing and being good at being good with people in general. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and I wish I would have known that earlier in my career, right? If someone was to say that you need to communicate better, you need to speak their own language of the people around you. Earlier in my career, it's not just about doing good design and then everything else will flow out of that. It's kind of moving that along, to speak the language of the people that are the real big influencers. But one other thing to add on that is, designers for years have been asking for that seat at the table, right? Like, I want a seat at the table. I want to be with the big boys and make decisions and influence business. And I see that now happening over the last several years, and definitely over the course of my career, where designers are giving more opportunity and they are listening more than they have been before. And so now it's a great time to be in product design and product management, because they're kind of thirsty for that knowledge, I think, the business leaders. And now we have that opportunity for the seat at the table. Now we just have to make sure that we make good use of it.
100%, and it's an opportunity, right? As I think we should make use out of it. I think very often designers are complaining in a company about like maybe how maybe the design team is maybe perceived, or maybe about the lack of power they have in the process. But ultimately, it's also something that we all designers take responsibility also for, and. I would be really interested how you did it when you were joining the different companies in terms of design leadership, and how do you bring design to the table. Something I've been hearing a lot talking to other design leaders is that you really want to focus on listening first, and also listening what are the business problems, because as a design leader, you are one of the leaders together with the sales team, the engineering team, and all of the other teams, and they care about all the things. They have all the problems, and also you understand maybe what's the business struggling with, right? And what's the biggest company problem we have? Maybe it's something on the sales side, where maybe they need too many people to onboard people on the product. And then this might be an opportunity to bring design to a discussion where design maybe wasn't present. So you could start to think about, hey, maybe we should talk to the sales team and think about how can we make the product more easier when we have to onboard new clients. Maybe we can work out something on the funnel. So there's opportunities in the company to get designers involved, and but it's about listening and then understanding how you can propose that. Obviously that requires a certain opportunity on resources as well, always, but it requires interest as well. So if you're not interested in the rest of the company, and you're not interested to have the production team, or then also the role of design is also not going to change in a company. I think it changes by being proactive and by being listening in. And but I would be curious about your experiences. You joined multiple companies in a leadership position. What was your experience?
A lot of what you're saying I rings true. I think you are going back a little bit to what you were saying before about you're designing or you're solving business problems, not just design problems. And I think once you kind of realize that, it helps you kind of get out of your own world a little bit. And like when someone is saying, for example, we got to drop off in our onboarding process. How do we do that? Like no one's saying, how do we design it better necessarily? They're just saying, this is a business problem. But you, with your design skills, can help solve that problem, that business problem, by applying good design for it, if it hasn't already. And I think tuning into what the real problem is, and it's not just about designing a beautiful product or even a very usable product, but it's a product that the business can get value out of, and the users can get value out of. And if you're not doing that, you're probably missing something there. But I think the business leaders that see that value really get it. So I think you can take that approach with just leading a design team as well. So even if you're not, have a direct communication to the executives or higher level teams, you're still in communication with engineering teams, with product teams, with the closer kind of halo of people that affect you, and you affect them, and knowing how to work with them and understand each individual group's problems, and how do you apply your skill set to that.
100%. Let's dive into some of your experiences. There are multiple ones to talk about. I think what of course stood out was your experience at Mercedes, joining the innovation lab team. What did you experience there in terms of maybe the design culture and maybe the opportunities designers have when it comes to the mobility space?
Yeah, I think with Mercedes, I think the goal there was to explore these new product ideas, but also new business ideas to extend what Mercedes can offer beyond just the car itself. So they're really great at designing cars. They're really great at trucks and financial services. They have all kinds of facets of their business. But I think that business, just like others, are always looking into how do you safeguard the future with other business ideas? How do you do things that are a little bit outside of the norm and some experimental, right? That can still be connected to the core business, but they're definitely outside of the core business. So if you thought about Mercedes doing any kind of, mobility services or, whether it's car sharing or any number of type of renting or, things that are just a little bit off of what just selling cars or fixing cars. That was kind of the mission there. So it was really good experience to work with a big car company, the oldest car company in the world. A lot of infrastructure, a lot of politics, a lot of everything kind of put in place already, and try to do something very, very new and uncomfortable for them. So it was a great learning experience for me in kind of navigating those waters and, trying to help them, understand what potential avenues for future businesses that could, affect their bottom line eventually.
Yeah. It would be interesting now to understand what's the value of design in this discussion. I think kind of to tie it to some of the discussion I had in parts of the episodes. I think one of the design superpower is to make the abstract concrete and drawing a picture of what that could be. I'm always saying this on the podcast. I think designers don't have to be, or the picture you draw doesn't have to be correct, but it summarizes a point of a discussion. And by that, you spark imagination, you spark new ideas, and you have a foundation that you can then discuss about. Because if you don't make the abstract concrete, you're going to stay abstract and you're never going to move forward. And it potentially takes multiple loops, right? So you're doing the first materialization of the abstract and you do it multiple times. And I know a lot of designers working very early on in the process where they may be working with business stakeholders, or even working in business departments or business teams, like service designers. And they're so good with visualization, quick visualization, drawing, being able to visualize quickly. And I think that's such a powerful thing of design, is that we can actually accelerate discussion. We can accelerate the process by giving context to what the current idea is.
Yeah, it's bringing it to life, right? And sometimes with that one or that journey or that persona that really crystallizes the problem in a really good way and crystallizes the solution that maybe they're not used to seeing, and they're like, yes, and that 4 slides that you showed, we really understand that. You understand the problem, and then therefore there's a little bit of trust built with the solutioning then, because you understand the problem. But that I think the way you said it, bringing the abstract to concrete, is really good, because that's we're doing that at multiple levels, from the actual design to the problem to who our user really is. All those things are going from abstract to concrete. And then in the traditional sense, it's really visualizing the actual solution, right? The UI or whatever it is, the product design that you're creating. Sometimes, if you don't lay it out there in front of them, then they can kind of interpret it their own way, right? And sometimes that's good if you're really exploring, but sometimes you want them to see it the way you had that vision for it. And I think there's nothing stronger than laying out that vision and then having them, get behind it and follow that. And that's pretty powerful, a pretty good feeling for a designer to be able to kind of do that, and people believe in that.
I think the important thing there is, I totally agree to what you're saying, but the important thing I think there is to step out of the ownership. Because if you don't create that shared ownership, it should not feel like the designer has been coming up with something, right? It should feel like we have been coming up with something, and the designer supporting that discussion, right? And there are a couple of tricks to do that. For example, like, do you have to be the person that actually is presenting, or maybe you ask the engineering head to present it, or like the person that is actually going to work on the implementation side of it, right? So how do you can bring other people and something to that? I think something how you could frame it would be probably like getting as many signature on if you think about a card drawing as possible, like where maybe traditionally you have like a signature of the designer on it. I think like what you want to do with innovation is take, you don't want to have multiple signatures on it. The best thing is if your signature is the smallest, that means like your innovation has a chance to survive, right? Because and it's not, again, that would be a wrong way to phrase it. It's not your innovation, it's really the whole stakeholders working together on an innovation, and you're helping to accelerate it. But at the same time, the problem there is that designers are they're getting very emotional about like what they are developing. Yeah. That's a problem as well, right? So there's this constant battle between, you need to love your idea, but you also need to be fine to throw it away. And you need to be fine if you don't own the idea anymore, even though you have been spending so much time to kind of make it look good and make it great. But that's I think always something that I think is a kind of a balance, that, as a designer, you have to work out with your team. It's like, how can you keep people motivated, but also not too detached, because then it's going to be hard, right? If something's going to change too much or taken forward in a different direction. But
yeah, I think, and these big ideas, like the big ideas are always a collaboration. They're never just like, he did it, kudos to him, and he's the hero. But it's really a combination of so many different people, like that product side, the engineering side, the design, the business side, all coming together to come up with that big idea. It's unlikely that any one of those individuals is going to come up with that perfect idea. So
exactly.
And it can't be overstated that the team coming together is going to come up with something collectively better than an individual. And I actually like when those ideas are pitched that way, as a collection of those different functions and skill sets, kind of pitching the idea collectively versus like one person. It doesn't have to be the designer saying, here's this amazing idea, let me tell you about the business side, the design side, the product side, the engagement, all that. And it also doesn't necessarily always help to have the senior engineer or even the senior product person doing all that. But that, what I've learned over the past is kind of having that team approach to even the pitching the ideas is more powerful, especially to the customer, outside of the context of your own hierarchy. But the customer, I think, really likes to hear those perspectives. And they get to hear the passion of each one of those people, right? The designer can really, support the areas that they're most passionate about. And everyone can do, and the product person and the engineer, and all that, but they're all still in concert supporting each other. It's not like they're all competing with each other. They're supporting each other, but all for that same goal. And I think those pitches end up being better than just one person.
Yeah, 100%. So you worked in the automotive space, and now since you got a lot of experience there, if you worked on different, technical innovations, I'm also assuming, what is the opportunities for designers in the automotive and mobility area, do you think, for the next, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years? What do you think is the major opportunity for designers to contribute in the obvious transformation that is happening in the space?
Oh man, well, there's lots of opportunity now more than ever, right? Over the last 7, 8 years, we've seen mobility services and everything from scooters to car sharing to car buying in different ways, and each one of those things have needs a designer's perspective on it. So there's tons of opportunity in those businesses that support automotive. Mm-hmm. And then I think the automotive itself, I think you're very near and dear to this, and it's the experience, the in-car experience needs a lot. I think it's getting way better now, mm-hmm. With the recent things that have happened in the last few years. But for a long time, it stagnated, and the cars basically looked the same. And the UIs were, 7 inches and terrible and didn't update. And they were old as soon as they left the parking lot of the sales lot, right? So I think the biggest opportunity is making those car UIs better and better, right? And I think some of the new stuff we're seeing from, Tesla and Mercedes and Apple even recently, shows a lot of promise in that area of really making it a much better experience inside. It's not just about touching a screen, but it's about this kind of seamless connectivity with the people that are in the car, right? And the devices that they already have in their pocket and the services that they get and over-the-air updates of the UI. A lot of opportunity there to make it better and better. And I think we're going to see a lot of change in the next 5 years. So a lot of exciting things to come, I think, from all over the board. There's a new way of thinking now, with these new UIs and with the hardware that supports those UIs, that's opening up opportunities. It's just like that transition from the flip phones to the smartphone, where now designers have a much bigger playground to play in and can realize visions that they couldn't do on that flip phone. Now they're able to do the same thing in the automotive industry, in the car with the hardware technology that's in the car allows better experiences for designers to create.
100%. I think that the digital side, there's so much to do. And, I think what's also interesting, because you were at Bird before, right? So you worked on a Bird micro scooter experiences. I think there's a different mindset around how you develop a product, because I think they are starting with software and then do the hardware potentially, right? Thinking about the system, the service, then from there on they derived the product. While I think on the automotive, sometimes it can be the other way around, right? You do the interface, maybe the last, right? The digital interface. So I was wondering about process. So could you take some learnings that you did in the sort of let's say scooter startup, micromobility space, and any kind of ideas that you found fruitful in terms of process, approach to innovation in a company such as Mercedes?
I think it's focusing on the experience, right? Like I mentioned earlier, around what is that kind of seamless experience from end to end, from when you get in the car to in the car, during the driving, and then out of that. I think car companies, typically are focusing on the engine and how fast it is and the torque and all that kind of stuff, which is all great. But I think it's at some point the user experience is still inside the cabin of the car, and that's the most important thing, I think, for the vast majority of people. Just getting to one place to the other is what is it like when you're in the car? You can only go so fast on a freeway or on a city street, so you may not make use of that big engine, but I think you would definitely make use of the connectivity. And I think working with these services like Bird and the experience of designing those is you really think end to end from before I even get into that scooter or get into that car, to how do I pay for it, how do I use it, how do I end the experience and leave it, and whatever, all that can be thought about more in the traditional car. I think we're doing that now. So I think it's becoming more relevant now.
Yeah. I think it's important also from my experience in the automotive space, I think it's interesting to point out that it's going really beyond what we would traditionally say UX designer, because I think a lot of the experience in the digital automotive space is derived by the tech stack as well, and by the way the infrastructure, the software architecture works. These are things that are going a bit beyond, and really to modify that, you need to be involved very early on from a design side and probably map out, okay, what are the most important things, and then you got the opportunity to maybe influence also the software architecture. But I think some of the biggest transformation is actually not. There's obviously transformation happening on the front end and sort of that digital experience, but there's maybe even bigger transformation happening on terms of how data is shared, how devices are connected, what's the tech setup, can we access the account information, what is this programmed on. These going to influence major pieces in terms of the flexibility you later on have as an experience designer. And being involved there early, and I got the chance also to see what kind of power that has if user experience joins these discussions before you have set up any architecture of the software architecture, and kind of work with the engineers towards what is best what can we actually do, and then kind of derive from what kind of partnerships we may need to create, what kind of integrations we may need, etc. Derive the requirements for the technical side, the business side, etc. From that early conversation, I think is important. But I think we talk a lot about user experience in the automotive setup and the innovation that needs to happen there. But it's the innovation of the user experience is very tight to the technical innovation, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's this kind of push-pull, right? And I think when you're connected close with the engineers and the right groups that are really influencing that tech stack, you really have to work together, because I think the engineers may have all these capabilities, but maybe they're not sure how to put it all together. What does that mean for the product experience, and is it valuable to the user, and how will they use that? And I did a lot of that at Qualcomm, where we were developing new products where it was technology first, which is untraditional, right? And a product company is like, usually it's like come up with a need and then develop the product and the technology around that need. But as a hardware tech enabler, Qualcomm has the technology first, and they're kind of on the cutting edge of that technology as well. So there's there may not be product experiences for those tech just yet, and so my team was able to help them with that, to envision what could you do with that technology, this robotics tech, or this AR tech, or display tech. Like, how could we use that in products? And then working really closely with engineering of like, well, could you change it to be a little bit more like this? Then we could do something even different or even better. And then we can really work together in that way. And then we have to learn, of course, on the technical side, what does the tech enable? Can we do what we really want with that tech? And how do we specify something different that they can work on in order to make it better?
Yeah, and I think another aspect, I think, is purchasing and supply and sort of what kind of hardware do we have available. I think what's interesting about the automotive side is that your ability of the digital user experience is strongly going to depend on what the hardware purchases are. Right? If the processor is too not strong enough, can design animations until the end of the day, but like it's not going to go in there. It's going to be clunky. The display speed is not going to be fast enough. So, and these cycles take a long time, right? It's not as in airplanes where you have like 10 years of development cycles, but not as long as that. But you definitely have longer development cycles compared to scooter startup, right? Let's say like Bird can innovate a lot faster because building that scooter takes a lot less time. They can source the elements they would need, and with in an automotive setup, you have to think about longer cycles. I mean, there are factories going to get built, and they may have contracts with a certain supplier for processors for 5 years, and a graphic chip supplier that another 2 years. So you're going to have to work with what you have on the hardware side. And well, if you don't have that sensor in, if you don't have that partnership with this company, if you don't have that agreement to use a certain technology, then you're just going to be very limited as a designer. You're just going to have to work with what you have. And that's why I just want to emphasize the major innovation is happening really on the front of the requirement side. And I think that's where designers need to get strongly involved and influence the requirements that you may need for purchasing decisions that are going to be long-term contracts. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about now your recent experience in the healthcare space. So you've been working at Gier as the VP of Product Management and Design, again, bridging sort of a PM and a design role here. Going into the business side as well. Could you talk a little bit about your experience there? What kind of innovation opportunities you see for designers working in the space? What makes you excited about the space?
I mean, healthcare is kind of like this other big, great frontier. I think that is of good design, and it's what really interested me. Healthcare isn't normally known as for good products or good design or supreme experience. So there's an opportunity there to me. There's opportunity to do something different, to do something better, to rethink it, and the effects of that are pretty big. Because you're directly affecting patients' lives or doctors who take care of those patients and the tools that they use. There's a lot of opportunity there, I think, in the healthcare space. And I think what attracted me to Heal and the industry in general, but specifically Heal, is that mission to help people. And it's great designing stuff for cars and scooters and phones. That's all fun as well. But when you're doing things for patients and for doctors in the healthcare industry in general, it's something that you can get behind that makes you feel good about what you're doing on a daily basis. That you're actually making someone's lives better. So that's really great. But there are tons of challenges, right? And I think if we look into the kind of overarching trends and mega trends that are going on right now, you start to see the opportunities emerge in healthcare, right? Like there's more emphasis on health and well-being in general now, and there's lifespans are getting longer and longer, and there's more desire to have healthcare in the home. All these kind of things are trends that are going on, all over the world, and Heal is really tapping into those and designing solutions for that. The digitization of everything and the value of the data and all that kind of stuff is we're all trying to leverage that at Heal to make great products that bring doctors to the home to take care of people where they want to be taken care of. And a lot of these people, they might have mobility challenges and things like that, so they really have to be taken care of there, or it's very difficult to even see the doctor. So there's lots of small challenges within bigger challenges there that need to be solved, and I'm hoping to make a small dent in that.
There's so much to innovate on. Yeah, you're totally right. And I think it's also interesting because in the US, I think one of the big innovation spaces for the healthcare space is data, and sort of that how the legal setup is in certain countries really influencing also how much you can innovate. So, for example, I mean, in Germany, the regulations are a lot more tight on the privacy side, right? Things are more regulated. There are more public entities involved when it comes to data and etc. I've been talking to other designers also working on in healthcare startups, and I think one of the issues is always what kind of data do you have available? What can you maybe share? How much you can use to actually elevate the experience? What is possible on the infrastructure side? Also, sometimes these doctors, they don't have the right computers, or maybe their systems don't connect to a certain bigger system that they can then use, for example, to make something more transparent. So it really needs also a lot of innovation on a grassroots level, like on the infrastructure level. And in the US, it's, I think, a little bit different, because in the US, I think things are a bit more private companies involved. And I think by that, you also have, I think, more flexibility. But I'm wondering about your experience between the infrastructure and the data, and like how things are maybe set up, legacy technology that you have to incorporate maybe in the process, and how that's going to impact or may create opportunities for designers.
Mm-hmm. Well, data, I mean, we take data privacy very serious here too in the US, and with healthcare in particular.
Yeah.
HIPAA compliance and all those things that we really follow to a T, right? It's our whole business. We have to. But I think that we could use data not in the same way that advertisers use data in other apps or things like that, but we're using data internally to extend the knowledge of our doctors when they can't always be there, right? So for example, with remote patient monitoring, we can give patient a tablet and connected devices, medical peripherals that they can take their blood pressure or pulse or other kind of things, glucose readings, and those data transmissions can go to the tablet, and those tablet can then transmit that to our doctors, so that we can have a team of nurse practitioners or doctors that are looking at that data. So, we're not using those for, any kind of other purpose other than to facilitate easier access to the patient. And so that now we can see how the patient's doing without actually having to be there. And assuming that they're using the product and the peripherals consistently, we can start to see the trends of those, and whether it's in a daily trends, weekly trends, monthly or yearly. You can see right away where those trends are going. Are they is this patient getting better or worse? Is their blood pressure hitting spikes consistently, or is it just every once in a while when they go up a flight of stairs or something like that? We can translate that data, and the doctors know how to take that data and get what they need out of that and translate that for how they can do the next steps with the patient.
Yeah, and you said there's a lot of innovation happening on the health data side. Like what kind of, and I think to a certain degree also, I think Apple also helped with that with all of their innovations and infrastructure innovations, I think. And but yeah, it's getting more and more accessible. There's more data available for people. People start to track certain things, starting with how many steps they go, but it goes way beyond that. It becomes a lot easier for people to integrate this into their life. And this data, like you said, will influence science and will allow for even more innovation and at an accelerating speed, which is great. It's in the benefit of all. Yeah, Paul, there's so much more to go into. I feel like we just getting started, and I love all of your insights you shared so far. But I think because of time, I think we need to wrap it up, unfortunately. So on just behalf of the audience, I would really like to thank you for sharing all of your insights on the health space, in the automotive space, but then also your design leadership learnings in general. So thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Alright, that was the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments about your thoughts and biggest learnings from the episode. I'm always super curious about that. You can also tag me in a post about your biggest takeaway and share your insights with others to pass on your learnings. If the episode provided you a lot of value, make sure to follow, subscribe and share it with friends and colleagues so they also have the chance to learn and grow. Until next time, cheers.